So, if any of you haven't figured it out, I am a major fan of Sonic ever since I was a kid, and that includes the movies. Now, the first one was okay, had a lot of problems, but it was overall a good start to what was yet to come. The second one was pretty good, though it did have its own share of flaws. It was definitely an improvement from the first one. And then the third one came, which is arguably the best one out of the three. At least until the fourth one arrives in 2027. Which, hey, if it turns out to be even better than that, then you know damn well we're going to be in good hands. Hell, the third one already proved that enough, so. Yeah. And judging from the after credit scene, I think we could all piece together what it's going to mostly be about. How it's mostly going to involve Sonic and Co. along with Amy Rose, and how the main villain is supposedly going to be Metal Sonic. With perhaps Eggman might appearing, but who knows? I'm not saying that he's going to be dead. Like, there's no way they're going to just kill him off in the third film. Like, we all know he's going to come back eventually. But what if he didn't show up in the fourth film? What if he showed up much later on down the road? What if the fourth film turns out to be way different than what we think it would be? Which is why I made a list of ideas of what the Sonic 4 movie could be like. These are all ideas that I came up with on my own based off of Sonic content that I thought was really cool to see in the fourth movie, hopefully. Will they actually show up in the fourth film? Maybe not. But that doesn't mean that there's the possibility that it wouldn't show up to begin with. Maybe some of the ideas I have on here will be in the film. Maybe they won't. Who knows? But this is something experimental that I want to really try out to see if any of you really like these ideas. So, let's get it started. These are my ideas for Sonic 4. Number 1. Have the main antagonist be a Metal Sonic that serves as the hive mind for the other Metal Sonics, specifically the gray ones. Now, this is only if Eggman doesn't show up as the main antagonist of the fourth film, which, let's be honest, he'll probably be in the fourth film, but this is just a possibility, a what if, so to say, that what if he doesn't show up in the fourth film, and instead we had someone else be the main focus. Now, I'm not saying that Metal Sonic's not going to be the main focus in the fourth film to begin with. Obviously he is, because why wouldn't he? This is his debut film, just like in his debut game, Sonic CD, where he was first debuted in that game. It's just that, what if he was the main villain, aside from Eggman? This is where my idea of a Metal Sonic serving as a hive mind for the other Metal Sonics. Again, specifically the gray ones. Because what if the blue one, unlike the other ones, has his own mind, his own consciousness, and the other ones are just mindless drones being controlled by a hive mind? This is something I mostly got inspired from the Fleetway comics, where Britain made a comic series about Sonic, and their version of Metal Sonic was called Metallics. And there was a version of Metallics who was bigger than the regular ones and was red and gold, and sat in this mechanical chair where he served as the main hive mind for the other Metallicses in the Death Egg in that comic series, where he had full control over them. He was essentially the main big bad in one of the story arcs in that comic. So I was wondering, what if we had something like that in the fourth film? Where perhaps we could have it be a plot twist of sorts, where it's revealed that the main villain this whole time is a more advanced variant of Metal Sonic, who serves as the hive mind for the other Metal Sonics that we see in the film. That being the gray ones, with the only exception being the blue one, who would be the exception. Now, how this hive mind of the Metal Sonics could look like could be interesting. he could be either A, Neo Metal Sonic, which is definitely most likely, or two, he could look more like the one that I mentioned from the Fleetway comics, where he's big, red, and gold, or more like rose gold and regular gold. Or what if he's a fusion of both designs? He's a fusion of all the design properties of Neo Metal Sonic, that being his multiple quills and the various patterns on his body, along with the kilt and those weird wrist gauntlets on his hands, and the fusion of the hive mind of the Metallixes from the Fleetway Sonic comics. More specifically, their color schemes could be fused together, where the hive mind could have the patterns of Neo Metal Sonic along with some of his design properties like his quills, while also keeping that color scheme of the hive mind Metallix from the British Sonic comics, where it's a light rose gold and a regular gold. Well, to be more accurate with the description, the rose gold is mainly in the parts like Metal Sonic's head and upper body, along with the normal parts of his legs that are blue, but in his case they're red, and the parts that are gold being the mouthpiece and the shoulder pads and all the other parts of Metal Sonic's body that are usually silver but are instead gold. What if we had that, but with a much darker hue of color for them? I think it could create a very cool design, personally. Also, I just like the idea of a hive mind that controls the other Metal Sonics, like an ant colony of sorts. That's just one of my ideas. Now for number 2. Have the main Metal Sonic that Sonic and his friends encounter go through a character arc similar to the Sonic OVA. What I mean by this is that in the Sonic OVA, Metal Sonic goes through a kind of arc where he starts off as a villain, but near the end, he supposedly starts to become more of a hero. And that's because in the movie, it's explained that he obtains Sonic's personality, his brainwaves. Therefore, his heroism, as shown later in the film, where he nearly sacrifices his life saving the president in the film, which results in him dying in a lava pit, as Sonic tried to save him, but he swipes Sonic's hand away as he dies, being the heroic character he was at the end of the film. So I was wondering, what if they did something similar to that with the main Metal Sonic that we'll see in the film, who, looks like the usual Metal Sonic, unlike the hive mind? Now, to do this would be difficult. I'd have it be that the main hive mind Metal Sonic created the Metal Sonic we see in the movie as to be like the next step in the evolution for the other Metal Sonics, that being the gray ones, where they move like a hive mind, but the Metal Sonic we'll see in the 4th film, who I'll call Turbo Metal Sonic, or Hyper Metal Sonic like in the OVA, because why not? It sounds cool. He's going to be different. He's going to design to have his own form of independence, his own sentient being of sorts. Now, to do that, they could have it be where it's a part of his whole ability of copying his opponent. Because in the games, Metal Sonic had the ability to copy his opponent in regards to their biodata of sorts. So what if that could be utilized in the film to where he not only copies Sonic's biodata, he copies his brainwaves, which is a part of his way of evolving. And by doing this, he not only gains Sonic's personality in the films, but he also slowly gains his memories, which makes him think he's the real Sonic. And all these memories start to make him question what he's doing and what he's really fighting for, and if what he's fighting for is worth it. And then we could have there be a final climactic fight between Sonic and Metal Sonic, where Sonic tries to convince Metal Sonic to, defect from the other Metal Sonic robots and join forces with Sonic and his friends. And have it be in the end of the film where Metal Sonic sacrifices his life defeating the Metal Sonic hive mind, sacrificing his life to save Sonic and his friends along with Earth and possibly Sonic's home world, which I'm going to be calling Mobius, because they never really specifically say the name of Sonic's original home planet, and obviously Tails, Knuckles, and definitely Amy come from that same planet. I'm just going to call it Mobius, because what else am I going to call it? Earth number 2? Nah, that's just stupid. So, yeah, that's just a personal idea of what Metal Sonic's character arc could be in that film. That maybe he could have a arc similar to what he had in the OVA, where he starts off as a villain, but then over time starts to become more of a hero. And at the end of the film, he dies sacrificing his life to save the world. Something like that. Number 3, have Little Planet in the film. Now, in Sonic CD, there was this world that Sonic would have his adventures on in the game called Little Planet. Now, obviously, Sonic 4 is definitely taking some liberties from Sonic CD, because this was the introduction of Amy Rose and Metal Sonic. So, I'm thinking as a possible thing they could do for the 4th film, they could introduce Little Planet in some kind of way. How will they do that? Who knows? Maybe it will be in the film, maybe it won't. Maybe they'll replace Little Planet with Sonic's original homeworld, Mobius. Number 4, have time travel elements in the film, whether it be through the Chaos Emeralds or the Time Stones. Now, as we've known, the Chaos Emeralds have the power to manipulate time in a way through the usage of Chaos Control, which could be used to stop time or just slow down time, or just to do teleportation stuff, like how it can teleport the user or teleport other things entirely, as shown in Sonic Adventure 2 when Shadow and Sonic use the power of Chaos Control to warp the Space Colony arc away from Earth in the game. So what if they use the Chaos Emeralds to implement the time travel elements from Sonic CD in Sonic 4? Because if they are adapting the events from Sonic CD, there is a very high likely possibility that time travel will be involved like it was in the game. The only question is, how will they do it? So they could either do it with the Chaos Emeralds, which would make sense given they have the power to use time-related abilities and whatnot, or they could introduce the Time Stones, which were in Sonic CD. The Time Stones were their own separate thing. Yes, they looked like the Chaos Emeralds, but they weren't actually the Chaos Emeralds. They were their own thing. The Time Stones, obviously given their name, do time travel stuff, which was the main thing that Sonic had to collect in order to get the actual good ending, because that's how he stops Eggman from using Little Planet to create the bad future and whatnot. So what if they introduced the Time Stones in the movie in a certain way? Or perhaps on Sonic's original home, Mobius, that was where the Metal Sonics and possibly Eggman discover a mineral on that planet known as the Time Stones. Or they could originally be called a Chrono Crystal, which was shattered by probably Amy with her hammer, which would result in the creation of the Time Stones. However, it would cause a chain reaction, causing the stones to disperse, possibly from separate points in time. These could probably be the main MacGuffins of the 4th film, where the characters are racing to collect all the Time Stones before the main villains do, because obviously if they get the Time Stones, they're going to do some pretty evil stuff with that. Especially if you encounter multiverse theory, where each timeline is their own separate possible reality. Will it be complicated? Yeah, definitely. But it will be interesting to see that happen. Maybe it will happen, maybe it won't. Who knows? Here's my next example. perhaps there could be an environmental message. Now, Sonic CD, to some extent, did have a bit of an environmental message in it, as shown with the good future and the bad future, where the good future is where it's the most healthy, so to say, where there's less technology that has corrupted the environment. Everything's super beautiful. It's all sunshine and rainbows. It's full of life, plants, and plentiful trees and stuff. It's all really good. Whereas opposed to the bad future, where it's all completely consumed by technology, where all traces of organic life has been completely eradicated, replaced by machines, wires, oil. You get it. It sucks. So what if they could possibly implement that kind of environmental message in the movie through the usage of the same kind of form of time travel, where as the characters travel throughout time, they could see the possible futures that could lead if they either succeed or fail to stop Eggman and the Metal Sonic Army. Where they could possibly either have a good future where both Earth and Mobius are completely full of organic life, where it's completely unaffected by the powers that be from Dr. Eggman. And of course, they could also show us the bad future, where their worlds are completely consumed by technology, where it's a steampunk, cyberpunk hellscape. This could be a really cool way to heighten the stakes of the story. Maybe they'll do it, maybe they won't. That's why I made these ideas. These are just hypothetical what-if scenarios that could happen in the movie that I just found interesting. Now for the next one. Amy Rose could be from a dark future where the original planet Sonic lived on had been invaded by the Metal Sonics. Now this is also a possible way to introduce Amy, where Amy Rose is from a far-off future of sorts, a dark future, where perhaps Sonic failed to stop Eggman, where perhaps Eggman captured Sonic in the first movie and used his raw chaos energy that gives him his super speed to create his Metal Sonics. And as time went on, he would drain Sonic of every last drop of his energy until he was dead, creating all those Metal Sonics, which would go on to conquer the world, reduce it into a mechanical nightmare. He conquers Earth and whatnot, and who knows, maybe he begins to invade Sonic's homeworld, Mobius, with the Metal Sonics, which is how Amy would be introduced to those Metal Sonics in the first place. And maybe this could also introduce the Time Stones, which could be how Amy Rose escapes and enters the timeline that we've known in the movies, where none of that bad stuff happened. Not yet, at least, because, multiverse theory, whatever. This could be a viable way to introduce Amy, where she could possibly be from a darker future where the Metal Sonics won, where her version of Mobius is a complete nightmare consumed by technology and by the rule of Dr. Eggman, or at least that world's version of Dr. Eggman, and the Metal Sonic Horde. Here's my next one. Little Planet could be an alternate future version of Earth, transformed into a giant mechanical machine. Now this could serve as a plot twist, where perhaps, in my version of the story, where the Metal Sonic that serves as the hive mind is the main villain, could reveal to Sonic & Co. after capturing them that little planet that they stand on, which in the film is like a giant mechanical planet of technology that he has complete control over, where all the Metal Sonics are created, that is a future version of Earth, where Eggman would win in that future, and he would go on to create Metal Sonic, the first one of its kind, where it would serve as a leader to the rest of the Metal Sonic army, which would go on to overpower Gun and the rest of the military complexes of the planet. And as they continue to do this, they would begin to turn the Earth into a giant mechanical machine, essentially working like a virus, spreading and spreading until it's consumed every crevice of the Earth until there is nothing left but mechanical machinery that essentially would be a living hell for organic life. And in that timeline, Eggman would essentially die of old age eventually and would pass on the mantle of leadership to the first Metal Sonic he created. But first, he would upgrade him into the Metal Sonic hive mind that we would see in the fourth film. And he'd probably be called something like Metal Prime or Neo Metal, perhaps, or Neo Metal Prime or something. Because I want to save the actual Neo Metal Sonic for much later on in the movie franchise. Because I personally think that Neo Metal Sonic is way too cool to be seen in the fourth film and then never be seen again. So I personally would want Metal Sonic's Neo form to be saved much later on down the road. Because I just think he's too cool to be in the fourth film and then never be seen again. Because that would suck. But who knows? Maybe he'll be in the fourth film or not. Only time will tell. But this is just my idea of what could happen in the story. Basically, Little Planet would be an alternate version of Earth that was turned into a giant mechanical machine by the Metal Sonics. And perhaps as time went on, they would view all organic life as some kind of virus, a parasite that needed to be cured. So Metal Prime, which I'm just going to be calling the hive mind for now, would eventually upgrade the now roboticized Earth, giving it giant engines that would allow it to travel throughout the stars, assimilating other planets, turning them into mechanical wastelands, until they would eventually encounter their timeline's version of Sonic's homeworld, Mobius, which could also be where Amy comes from. Again, from the last thing that I came up with, of her being from a dark future, this could be where she came from, where her world's version of Mobius was completely ravaged by the roboticized version of Earth that they would go on to call Little Planet, because maybe Earth could be smaller than Mobius, which could be a perfect way to describe it as a little planet, since it would be a smaller version of Mobius. So anyways, let's have it be that they tried... Hold on, I'm trying to recollect my thoughts. Okay, now, there's also the Master Emerald. What if, perhaps, when they were defeating Sonic, Knuckles, at a last-ditch effort to make sure they wouldn't get the Master Emerald, he shattered it, causing the pieces to scatter throughout the universe. But by doing this, it would also cause the Chaos Emeralds to scatter throughout the stars. And over time, they began collecting those Chaos Emeralds in that timeline throughout space. However, given that they were scattered randomly across the stars, they wouldn't know where exactly to find them all. So they would just find at least a few of them, like maybe 2 or 3. Which could give them that ability to time travel through chaos control. Now, this could be how they would find... This could be the main MacGuffins they're looking for, where they're searching for the 7 Chaos Emeralds to further increase their power, and to perhaps use it to travel throughout every point in time, continuing to assimilate various worlds. So Amy in this future would try to stop them the best as she could, but she would fail on her own, resulting in her world's version of Mobius being almost completely consumed by technology, thanks to the roboticized version of Earth. So, as a last-ditch effort, she uses one of the Chaos Emeralds that perhaps crash-landed on Mobius in her timeline to travel through time with chaos control, where she would then meet Sonic and his friends, who she would ask to help her try and stop the Metal Empire along with the roboticized version of Earth, so that they don't get all the Chaos Emeralds and use them to travel across every point in time, assimilating every planet. throughout the multiverse or something. This is a very ambitious idea. I know. Like, it took a while for me to try and figure this out. So, this is a very, very ballsy, out there idea for the fourth film. So, it's definitely a high possibility that it won't be in the film, but it would be an interesting idea. And now for the last idea. Have the story take place mostly on Sonic, his friends, and Amy's original home planet, that being Mobius. What I mean by this is that maybe they, instead of the whole timeline thing, it could be that Little Planet invades Mobius, and because of this, Amy would need help. And since Amy would have learned about Sonic and Tails and Knuckles' escapades on Earth, she would obviously go to them for help, seeing them as viable solutions to their problem with the Metal Sonics, which would also explain why the Metal Sonics would go to Earth, because they would follow her to Earth. And so the adventure would begin with them going to Sonic & Co.'s original home planet, Mobius. Now they could do this through either the usage of the Chaos Emeralds, given their teleportation power, or Tails could just build a small spaceship of sorts. Or maybe Amy herself has a spaceship that she would have them use to go back to their home planet. Now I want the film to mostly take place on Mobius because I want them to travel to another world, and I want the adventure to take place on another world instead of Earth. Now, I'm not saying Earth shouldn't be in the film at all. Maybe we could have some moments where the invasion is happening both on Mobius and on Earth. Who knows? And that's all the ideas I have. Thank you for watching, and I hope some of these ideas were interesting for some of you. I know that the way I've executed them may not have been the most optimal. They may not have been the best, because this really just was something that I wanted to share at this moment with you guys. I was kind of scared to share this with you guys because, you know, I was worried that it wouldn't do as well as the normal stuff I do, like, you know, the voice impressions that I do on my YouTube shorts. So they gain more attention than some of my longer videos. So I do hope that some of these ideas do interest you. Again, I'm not trying to say that I can make a better movie than Paramount. God no. God no. I know I'm definitely not the most qualified person in the world to make a movie. Hell no. Like, hell no. These are just ideas I wanted to share because I thought some of these ideas were cool. So, yeah. With that being said, I hope you enjoyed. Make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you later. Bye.